Hello and welcome to another themed build guide. This time I will be taking Poison Nova Necromancer from Diablo 2 and adapt it into Path of Exile. Since there are no cosmetics to change the skills the way I wanted them to look, so you'll have to use your imagination a bit. And before I start talking about technical stuff, give me some time to explain a few important things. As most of you know, Poison in 3.0 has been nerfed a lot, and it is now much harder to do spellcaster that uses Poison. It is still viable, but your damage is going to be much worse than most other builds. Also, you should know that I am not very experienced with CI builds, meaning I rarely play with energy shield builds. And also, energy shield has been nerfed in 3.0. So this video can also give you an idea how does it feel to play Poison build and CI build without any leech. Now let's get into the build idea. I'll explain more how it works in the item section. So for Poison Nova I chose to use Ice Nova. And I know it doesn't look anything like Poison Nova, but what other options do I have? Decay Nova is too fast and doesn't really look like a spell. And Fire Nova Mines, well, it just doesn't look well. I wanted some sort of slow expanding Nova. So Ice Nova seemed like the best fit. So the idea was to convert cold damage into fire and then fire damage into chaos, so that chaos damage could poison enemies. And scale most of my damage with damage over time instead of direct hits. So it would actually feel like a Poison Nova, which does damage over time. Also, it is very possible to use Vortex. It does have smaller AoE, and as you know, AoE got nerfed in 3.0 as well. But in addition, it also leaves a chilling vortex that does cold damage over time, which by the way does not get converted into chaos damage. Also, to boost my damage, I am using Frost Bolts. It has unique synergy with Ice Nova or Vortex. If you cast Ice Nova or Vortex targeting Frost Bolts, it will cast it from those Frost Bolts instead. So it does sort of increase your AoE a lot. While Vortex consumes Frost Bolt, but Ice Nova does not. And since Ice Nova has higher cast speed, you can cast it more rapidly than Vortex. You can also imagine Frost Bolts as Bone Spears, which pierces all enemies. So it also fits into the theme. Also, I am using Frost Wall, which resembles Bone Wall. And this Frost Wall also protects you from enemies just like Bone Wall in Diablo 2. And it sort of looks kind of similar. It would be cool to have cosmetics for Frost Wall to turn it into some kind of Bone Wall. And last skill that sort of resembles Diablo 2 is Flame Golem. Well, you could use Stone Golem to sort of look like a Blood Golem, but Flame Golem also gives you damage. And last thing that I happen to have is Cosmetic Armor and Helmet to make it look more like Necromancer. I am using a couple more skills, but I will talk about them in the skills section. I should quickly mention pros and cons. In general, this build is not very strong, and if you want to enjoy it, you have to go with the mindset of bringing some nostalgia back and playing themed build instead of doing some speed demon build or 5-second shaper killer. The main drawback is damage, and also not having any ES leech. As occultist you can get some energy shield regen, but I don't think it is enough. Things like breaches and harbingers are very annoying and dangerous. You don't have enough clear speed to deal with breaches before they overwhelm you. And Harbingers always ignite you, which prevents your energy shield from recharging. And in general, Harbingers are a bit too strong compared to the rest of the monsters. And if you have seen my previous video, you probably know how I feel about Harbingers. I guess with more damage it could be manageable. But I am using almost all my skills with 20 quality to boost my damage as much as I can, and still my damage is not enough. Some bosses were pretty easy, like very easy compared to other builds, but some bosses took very long time to kill. But like I said, if you play this build with the right mindset, it does feel more like Diablo 2, and encountering bosses was more like a challenge than just face rolling them in few seconds. So I wasn't really annoyed by the bosses, I was only annoyed by Harbingers. I did maps up to tier 8 I believe, and like before, some bosses felt pretty weak and some were a bit too strong. I did complete tier 5 beachhead map. Actually, this was the first time I tried beachhead map. I felt like I was using Frostballs more than Ice Nova or Vortex, because it just covers more range and is faster. By the way, leveling after using Poison was kind of good, and it did feel unique and different to all the other builds. But maybe live version could be better because you could use flask to heal yourself. It's not very efficient to do live build with occultist, so decide for yourself if you want to play this build or not. Items. Is it expensive? Not really. But if you want more damage, you're gonna have to get 6-link armor, which I wasn't able to get. And since energy shield is not very popular right now, getting energy shield items is pretty cheap. It still can get costly if you want to min-max it. So the main items are 2 consuming dark daggers, infernal mantle, and pyre ring. Since I was using coal to fire gem, I did not need 2 pyre rings. That way I could get better ES ring. So first you convert your cold damage into fire using pyre rings and cold to fire support gem, and you can do that from early levels and scale your damage with cold and fire nodes from the passive skill tree. At level 53 you can equip 2 consuming darks and convert 60% of your fire damage into chaos and start poisoning, or wait for level 65 and equip infernal mantle, which gives another 15% fire damage converted into chaos. So overall you only convert 75% fire damage into chaos. This conversion has been nerfed quite some time ago to prevent full conversion into chaos. And I can hear you screaming, but what about Volkur's gloves? They don't need conversion. Yeah, but they only have 20% chance to poison. And they have 50% less poison duration. So with a slow hitting spell, you're not gonna utilize it very well. Since I'm using Frostbolts to boost my Ice Nova damage, I am using Frozen Trail Threshold Jewel. This makes me cast 3 Frostbolts at once, and they speed up with time. On a falling, this is even good to clear all the normal enemies, and some weaker blue and rare enemies. And also helps you cast more Ice Nova or Vortex, well, from a distance. While it doesn't look very much like Necromancer from Diablo 2, but since AoE got nerfed and Poison got nerfed, you need to cheat a bit. And casting Ice Nova or Vortex from Frostbolt give you 40% more damage, which scales initial hit and all the damage over time. Witchfire Brew Flask is not mandatory, but if you do Uberlap it would be great to have it, and in addition use Temp Chains. For the rest of my items I am trying to get as high energy shield with as much resistances as I can. For bandit rewards I had to take a Lyra to get more resistances, and some mana regen. Now let's talk about skills and links. Links for Ice Nova and Vortex are the same, but there are quite few variations. Remember, I was not going for highest DPS, I was going for high damage over time. 2 most important support gems for Ice Nova are Deadly Ailments and Call to Fire. For the rest of the gems there are a few options. I am using Decay and Elemental Focus, that is for 5 link. In most cases Decay gives overall more damage, but just slightly more. You can go purely poison damage, but for that you should probably also alter my passive skill tree and get those poison damage nodes. I will drop some numbers from Path of Building on the screen, and I am looking only at damage over time. These numbers are counted against standard bosses, including 10 stacks of Wither and Vulnerability Curse and Elemental Overload. And for example, with my current setup, looking at damage per poison and decay, I have around 23-24,000 DPS with damage over time, and 23,600 DPS with initial hit. If I don't want to use decay, I could change it with Wild Toxins. Then my total damage per poison would be 23,000. And initial hit also 23,000. So as you can see, it has very similar damage. However, if you change passive skill tree a bit and get those poison nodes, and you can stack more than 1 poison, then you get, well, you probably get more damage over time with just poison without decay. However, it is easier to roll blue sockets on Infernal Mantle, so I guess using decay is probably better. After recording and listening to recording, I just remember that I forgot to mention about Unbound Ailment, which gives a lot damage and is better than decay. So instead of decay, better use Unbound Ailments. And Wild Toxin for 6 link, no efficacy. By the way, all these calculations were done with level 18 gems, but with 20% quality, except for Elemental Focus, which did not have quality. As always, I will add Path of Building import code in video description. Next, Frostbolts. You cannot cast Ice Nova or Vortex on Frostbolt if it was casted from Spell Totem, so don't even bother using Spell Totem. You have to cast it manually, which kind of sucks. So Frostbolts linked with Call to Fire, Elemental Focus and Faster Casting. Faster Casting is very needed, and even with this 4 link setup you can clear most of the enemies. Actually, you can turn this build into purely Frostbolt build, and on 5 link just use Frostbolts. So same 4 links but also add Deadly Ailments, or also Wild Toxin for 6 link, or Efficacy, since it is easier to roll blue socket. Also against bosses you need Wither, Spell Totem and Faster Casting. Of course, Discipline Aura for more ES. Herald of Ice gives a lot of damage, because it gets converted into Chaos, and the more Chaos you have, the more poison you do. Vulnerability curse is linked to Orb of Storms and curse on hit, but I'm thinking that to increase the clear speed you could actually use vulnerability with Blasphemy and drop Herald of Ice. This would help you trigger Profane Blue more often, because you wouldn't need to drop Orb of Storms to curse enemies. Well, of course you can use Witchfire Brew, so I don't know. But explosions from Profane Bloom are very good, and they also poison enemies, but against bosses it would not be better. Also, I am using cast and damage taken setup, linked with Immortal Call, Frost Wall and Frost Bolt. I am liking this Frost Wall setup a lot, and while these Frost Balls do not do very high damage, but you can cast Ice Nova or Vortex from them. And lastly, I am also using Flame Dash and Flame Golem. By the way, Swift Affliction support gem is not that great because it also lowers your poison duration. Anyway, so that's all for my skills and links. Now passive skill tree. I chose to use Occultist because it has the most Chaos damage. Because I was not converting my fire damage into Chaos early on, I first picked Wicked Ward. Then in Cruel, once I started using dual Consuming Darks, I picked Void Beacon, and in Merciless I picked Profane Bloom. For Uberlap there is a choice. You either get Malediction for +1 curse and use Stem Chains, or get Wild Bastion and get some energy shield regen. Personally, I would probably get Malediction and get them chains and more damage. From the passive skill tree I took most of the energy shield nodes, cold damage nodes and fire damage nodes also help. Frozen Trail Jewel goes here, House Inoculation, more Chaos damage, more damage over time, more ES, another jewel slot because it is just 2 points. And I have pretty nice jewel which boosts my damage, fire and cold damage, and basically all of them boost my poison damage. But you can get better jewels with increased poison damage. And like I said, if you want to go purely poison, you can get these poison damage nodes and maybe drop these Chaos damage nodes, or just level up more. Also, I did try to go into Templar area to get more AoE, but after some testing I refunded them and went more into Shadow area. By the way, my passive skill tree is for level 81. I should have leveled it more, but I just not very good with CI builds. I just don't like playing CI, and I was starting to become too annoyed by this build. But still, this build was probably one of the most fun builds in Harbinger League so far. It was just completely different experience. And in theory your DPS with 20 Wither stacks, vulnerability, elemental overload, level 20 quality 20 gems, 6 link armor, you can get 130,000 DPS including poison against standard bosses. Total damage per poison would be 61,000, almost 62,000. That is counting on Ice Nova cast from Frostbolt, without decay at level 86. So maybe there is some potential in poison damage, but it is not very efficient. Anyway, I was never a fan of CI builds, but AoE and poison nerfs feel pretty harsh. And that is all about this build. If you got some cool idea for another Fiend build, let me know in the comments below. If it is something interesting and decent on paper, then I will most likely do it. Also, I will have a written forum build guide for this build, link will be in video description. Thanks to all the patrons who continuously support me, especially during this Apocalypse 3.0 time. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Subscribe.